Hey church fam, what a great weekend. We are off the back of Tried and True conference and it was amazing, truly inspiring and really just a lot of wisdom that is there. The Bible says wisdom builds the house and Tried and True was full of just great wisdom for all kinds of relationships and it's just been amazing. So hey, if you missed it, you definitely missed it, but there is next year. Make sure you sign up. Pastor John Burns is speaking this morning and he's speaking on legacy. There will come a point in your life where you'll look back and you'll say, man, what was it all worth? Legacy is the ability to know what you've got and know how you're going to pass it on. So take notes, think about this message. I hope it speaks to you. Let's run together and let's leave something meaningful.
Wow, I love your church. I love you as a family. I love Chicago, even in the snow. Has no one informed the weathermen what time of the year it is? It's supposed to be spring. But it's amazing. Absolutely love you, adore you. I love your pastors. Take them home with me. You know, there's a book Helen has. It's called The Last Supper, and it's written by some of the most amazing chefs in the world. And each page is their picture of the last meal they would have if they had one last meal on planet Earth. If I was in the book, it'd be a picture of Chris and the lamb that he cooked last night. It was the number one best meal I've ever had. Anyway, let's give these pastors an amazing hand. We love you. Woo! Amen. You may be seated. Thank you, People Church. Thank you. You may not know it, but you're making a huge difference globally, and especially in Canada. You have a campus in Toronto, the way we say it, Toronto. And I love your church, and we need your church. We need it all over the world. And you may be coming, this may be your first time, and I pray it's not your last time, or you may be here, you've been here for years. Often we become so nearsighted, we don't see what we have. And you need to know that you have something that is so amazing and special. And, your pastor preaches great. But you know why he preaches great? Because of you. You pull it out of him. I mean, we can never be what we are without each other. But together it is absolutely amazing what we can be. And you're that. And I'm just thanking God for you and expecting that the future is explosive. Really. Come on, Barcelona. Amen. I can't wait. Can't wait. Is she going to sing that song to you in Barcelona? I'm listening to that song and I'm thinking, I can't wait till Helen sings it to me like that. Anyway, I'm going to preach a message on legacy. Okay? And I'm going to use this. Jorge, George, this is one of his tools or one of these weapons he uses for. What is it? What do you use this for anyway? Clubbing somebody? But anyway, I'm going to use it as an illustration, and I'm going to call it a baton, or like Chris would say, a baton. Down under, they say everything wrong. They say baton down there. It's actually a baton. But you know that we all have one of these. And what we have is actually the most important thing that we have. And it is called our legacy. It is our story. It is what we pass on. It is something that didn't start with us, okay? You have one of these, but it didn't start with you. You received it. It's been passed on. And what's been done to get it to you, you need to understand. And you need to be thankful. And you need to be amazed with it. And you need to honor it. You know how you honor something? You never treat it as common. Don't treat it as common. I love the whole concept of honor. Honor is to me, it's so amazing. I remember one time I was preaching in way over on the East Coast, and it was all Marines. They were like the size of Mack trucks. these guys. And they just oozed honor. There was a sense of honor. And I wanted to know, what is it all about? And ever since, I've just had this hunger to understand honor. Well, the Bible tells us what dishonor is. And sometimes you can understand what honor is more from dishonor. And there's a verse that says, a prophet's not without honor. In other words, it's dishonor, except in his own hometown. Well, that verse was explaining how Jesus, when he was in his own hometown, he was doing the normal miracles. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, hold it, stop everything. I know this kid. I know this kid. See, there it is. I know this kid. He's the carpenter's son. And from that moment on, I don't know if you ever saw this, but it's got to be one of the craziest verses in the Bible. From that moment on, Jesus could not do the great miracles he was doing. Not that he would not, he could not. Someone handcuffed him. How? They dishonored him. See, when we walk in dishonor, we lose the miracle. And every one of us has this baton, and we could lose the miracle. We could treat it as common. We could drop this baton. And really, that's the race. And the baton didn't start with you and I. And I've got stories about, my past and Helen's past that really touch my heart. But if you even go back farther, it goes all the way back to in the garden. God created us in his image. We messed up, and he had to send his son. Jesus came. God so loved the world that he sent his son that he could buy us back, and it all happened on the cross. We celebrated it. Easter, celebration of resurrection. But do you know that Jesus, all that he did is in your hands? Think about it. We're running a relay. Our life is a relay race. And in a relay, you could run the greatest leg of that relay. You could be the fastest guy that's ever run that leg. And if you drop the baton, you lost. Everything is in this baton. And I can't get over that God entrusted it to us. Entrusted it to you and I. We got a baton that we're supposed to treasure. And as we treasure this thing, we can hand it on. And really, it's about the generations. One of my favorite verses, Proverbs 13:22, says, a good man, a good woman leaves an inheritance to their children's children. You notice it didn't say children, it said children's children. Why? Because it actually is about your generations. It's about leaving something or passing on something to the generations. I don't know if you're good. I don't know if you're a good man or good woman. You could run the best race possible. But if you don't pass anything on, you lose. Success without a successor is a failure. It's all about the generations. That's why I love coming here and just being able to be part of what you're doing, because, I'm a little older than your pastors, and I just want to see them run this thing so well. Don't drop it. Think about the grandstands. The Bible tells us in Hebrews chapter 12, Verse 1, therefore we also, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, they're full grandstands. Some of you got relatives, grandparents, those grandstands. He says, since we're surrounded by them, since they're up there cheering, and you know what they're cheering? You know what they're yelling? Don't drop it. Don't drop it. Don't drop it. Let us lay aside every weight and sin which so easily ensnares us. It's so important to recognize sin hasn't come to take you out because Jesus already paid for sin. Came to take this out. To cause us to stop, to drop it, to give up. We live in a world today, I think there's a plague of hurting. A plague of that don't understand the value of their own life. I don't want to make light of it at all. But we're in an epidemic, young people, of suicide. And it's like, don't you know you're so valuable? But obviously, they don't. And whose fault may that be? It could be ours. Tell them. So, let me try and stick to my notes. It says, a good man, a good woman leaves an inheritance to the children. Well, so often we think that's money. It's not money. Okay? The currency of heaven is not money. Currency of heaven. What's the currency of heaven? It's people. And actually, it's heart. The currency of heaven is heart. So if we're going to lay up an inheritance, we actually need to bring people, touch hearts. If we're going to touch a heart, your heart needs to be touched. For all the people that want to preach a message that touch a heart, touch your heart. You want to preach a message that really going to stir people, get stirred. You yourself need to be that. And we get to pass on what we are. We're all running this relay race, and it's about the generations. And in a relay, every one of us receives something. And there's 3 things that we get in this race. Okay? The first thing we have is called a heritage. The heritage is what's lived on before us. It's all the generations and the price that was paid before us. And then what we have is what we run with, and it's called the inheritance. We all have an inheritance. It's how we run this race, what we do with this baton. And then we all leave a legacy, what we pass on. So those 3 things are the things I really want to focus on for a few minutes. God has entrusted them to us. Dr. Lester Sumrall used to be, when he was on the planet, he's in heaven today, but he's one of the greatest men in the last 100 years. I could go on and on about all that he's done, but he was kind of a mentor in my life. I was in my early 30s, and he was in his 80s, and he's one of my best friends. And he said this to me. We actually wrote this down. He says, in the arena of science and technology and every other arena of knowledge and learning, knowledge has been passed on from generation to generation. Only in the area of passing the spiritual sword or baton or baton have we failed. It seems every generation must begin again. That's just not right. See, our story is the collection of the choices we've made, the days, the moments. Not the collection of what's happened to us. The collection of what we've done. And our story is written most often in tears. Really what you pass on isn't so much the good times as it is the hard times. Think about it. Every good story is about all the challenges that you've overcome. So if you're in a challenge, good. Don't quit. Don't drop the baton. Keep going. A lot of people say, well, I things like this. I've heard this before. I would love to believe like you. I just wish I would believe like you. In other words, it's supposed to happen to you. Like you're a victim of what you believe. God's never created a victim. It's a choice. It's a choice to believe. A lot of people come to church, and I sure hope that they got everything stirred up so I can just feel the presence of God. If you need to go to a place to feel the presence of God, then you're a victim. It happens to you. But we are supposed to make choices. And you know, this doesn't happen without somebody making a choice that this is going to happen. You know, Barcelona needs to have this, but someone has to make a choice to go there and make this happen. We don't sit back and wait till it happens to us. We actually step out. That's how we write a story. We don't write a story from what happens to us. We write our story by our choices, by doing what is not easy to do in the face of all the challenges. That's what makes a difference. That's what people remember. And every one of us, we are the recipients of this baton. If you are a Christian, and if you aren't, you're here and you have the ability and you'll have the choice, but you didn't get here on your own. None of us got here on our own. Somebody paid a price. Nothing happens that someone doesn't first pray. Someone prayed for us to get to this place. And when you begin to understand that and actually value that, it begins to change our today. And we begin to live this today and hold on to this today. We were just watching, sitting in the front row here. Helen, with the phone, called up our church and watching on whatever it was. She's watching right now live. Our church is live. You know who's preaching? My daughter. 2 months ago, I handed the baton because 33 and a half years ago, we planted a church in Vancouver. I was a dentist and, went through all that schooling and everything else. And I just made a decision one day. Someone said to me, listen, John, you can do anything you want with the rest of your life. Just answer this. What's the best? It's true for every one of us. You can do anything you want with the rest of your life. What's the best? And I just knew it was church. So I jumped out of the boat, walking on water like Peter did. I hung up my drills, wrote a letter of resignation, burnt my bridges, and we started a church 33 and a half years ago. And I handed that baton on to my daughter. She's now our lead pastor. People say, why did you give it to her? Well, I'm so glad that she's a she, because I love the idea, and I love the fact that women, whatever God's called you to do, you don't let anybody limit you. You have a voice, and we need to hear your voice. I love that. Do you know in the world today, let me just ride that for a little bit. In the world today, one of the most dangerous sentences you'll ever hear is in a delivery room, and it's the sentence, it's a girl. It's often a death sentence. Do you know that there's tens of millions of females that are not on the planet today that should be, that were taken from the womb because they were a female. That's wrong. And God's always called the church to right the wrong, and yet sometimes the church we're the same thing. We just let the women, you're in the background someplace. But anyway, that's my hobby horse. But I handed this on to her, so why did I give it to her? You know why I gave it to her? Because she would treasure it the most. She would value it the most. How you hold this baton is how you live your life. And how you treasure your life will be the value that you recognize in this baton, not baton, that's been passed on to you. I grew up in Vancouver, second oldest of 11, and yes, we were Catholic. And I went to church every Sunday of my life, but I really didn't know Jesus. I didn't know. It was a guessing game whether I'd go to heaven or not. I didn't know. There was just a really hurting on the inside wanting to know. And then when I was 18, someone told me, there's a girl that likes you, and you should go out with her. And I really didn't get my attention because I used to stutter really bad, okay? I know it's hard to believe because I talk a lot now. That's what happened when you get filled with the Holy Ghost. You just never shut up. But back then, I didn't talk, and when he said that, it didn't get my attention because I was afraid of girls. I'd never talked to a girl. And then he said to me, but if you do talk to her, don't mention God. She'll talk your ear off. She's one of those Christians. And so that got my attention. And the next thing I remember is I found her, and I was talking to her, and I convinced her to skip out of school with me for the afternoon. Yeah, her first time, my millionth time. And my question was, why am I not supposed to mention God? And, well, I still have ears. But anyway, she did talk my ears off, and I fell in love with what was on the inside of her, which was Jesus. And then I fell in love with her, and she is my wife, and we will be married 45 years next month. And I say all that to say I'm so thankful I met her. Why? Because I'm so thankful that I know Jesus. So thankful that heaven's my home. So thankful that I've got a life that makes a difference. But where did she get it from? Well, her parents. Her parents are amazing. They're both, well, her mom's my only parent left. She lets me know that all the time. But her dad's in heaven today. And her dad's dad, so her grandfather, was a pastor in Paraguay, in a Mennonite German-speaking colony in Paraguay. And he came from Russia, where he was born in Russia and escaped the Russian Revolution and went to Paraguay and started this church down there. And their church, little church in Paraguay, has made such a difference in Canada. And when her grandfather passed away, we got one of the memorials that is the most important one to me. We got his Bible. thick Bible written in Gothic German. But when you open the front cover, there's a list of names that he prayed for every day, and I'm in there. And I'm so thankful. I know I did not get here. And so I want to actually value that. So one of the things I do is twice a year at least, I go back to Paraguay and mentor pastors. And then we go to Russia, and we do the same thing, to Germany. Why? Because it's where I came from, where this came from. And when you value the past, I think then you begin to learn how to live right now for the future. God has a purpose and a plan for every one of our lives. It's like a book. I did this once in church, and so many people got mad at me. I won't do it again. But if you take a nice big book, okay, and everybody likes to read a good story. So it's a really good story. Good stories have a lot of challenges in them, don't they? Yeah? So open the book somewhere in the middle of the book and rip a page out. Throw the book away, and here, that's your life. Can you tell me who you are by reading this page? No. See, we don't know who we are until we know why we are. Until we know the price that's been paid for us. And the best part of every book is the ending. You don't know the ending. But if you look at the whole picture, it gives us identity. You know, we have 3 daughters, and for all the parents in the room, I'll give you a little tip. This is what we do. I think it's really great. But every year, and they're now in their 40s, but every year on their birthday, we tell them their story. Their story didn't start with them. The story started with why he wanted them. And what happened as got pregnant, and what happened as that day came, and what happened, and we tell the story, and they love it. They love listening to their story. Why? Because it gives them identity. So often, I've talked with young couples that are going through challenges. I remember one couple. It was years and years of infertility and crying and buckets of tears. They wanted to have a baby. And finally, they got pregnant. And I kept telling them, don't waste those tears. God actually keeps our tears in a bottle. Why would he keep them in a bottle? Because he never forgets. And he always takes account of every price you've paid. And don't forget those tears. Write it down. Tell the story. And so they got pregnant. They had this little girl. And every year they tell the story with many tears of why they can't wait and why they couldn't wait and why they're so happy. See, until we know why we are, until we know the story that we've come from, we don't have the identity that God wants us to have. So every one of us, we're here for a reason. And the Bible tells us that we need to actually be responsible to tell that story. Be responsible to the generations. Live with the generations in mind. Psalms 119 verse 9, he says, your faithfulness is from generation to generation. Psalm 22:30 says, tell of the Lord to the next generation. Psalm 45:17, I will make your name to be remembered to the next generation. Oh, please, don't drop the baton, church. 33 years ago, got out of the boat and planted a church and did everything I can. And you guys, you got this baton. So much more in front of us. The world needs what you have. Psalm 145 verse 4 says, one generation shall laud your works to another and declare your mighty acts. Paul had a son in the faith called Timothy. He says in 2 Timothy 1:5, I remember your genius faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I know that same faith continues strong. It didn't start with you. Timothy, it didn't start with you. I know what you got. It's so important. And every one of us, we've got this for a reason. And it's not about us, it's about the generations to come. You know, one of the saddest verses in the whole Bible, it's Judges chapter 2, verse 10. This is talking about Joshua and the Joshua generation. You know, that Joshua saw the walls of Jericho come down, fought all those battles, conquered all that. And we think, wow. But actually they dropped the baton, and I'll tell you why. But listen to this. It says, when all that generation, Joshua's generation, had been gathered to their fathers, another generation arose after them that did not know the Lord, nor the work which he had done for Israel. Wow. Saddest verse in the Bible. You say, well, why? What went wrong? You know, one of the reasons, I think, but the big one, they had no grandparents. Think about it. They all died in the wilderness. The only two of that generation that came out of the wilderness was Joshua and Caleb. You know that we need each other. Those ones that have gone. I'm not saying that I'm the old one. My best years are in front of me. But we just need to recognize each other. And when I was young, I didn't realize that. So if you're going to pass this baton, this legacy on, there's three things you need to do. First thing is honor the past. Honor the past. Value. Don't treat your past as common. Think you're a mistake. Don't think that you're here just because of what you did. All that you did is great. Someone's been praying. Somebody. You might think, well, I've got a terrible past. Go back past that. We go back all the way to the cross, and we recognize who we are. But until we value, honor past, I don't think we can treasure this the way we need to. I pass the baton of our church to my daughter. Why? Because she'll treasure it. She'll hold on to this. Won't drop it. Why? Because she knows what we paid. She was there. She felt the tears and all the what we put into it. Second thing, okay, honor the past, and then pour your heart into this moment. This moment. This moment. Most important moment in your life is this moment. You don't get another one. This is the most important moment. And recognize that this moment has potential beyond what you imagine or think. The Bible says two things. Put these two together and it just goes wow inside of me. But in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8, the Bible says that God's put eternity in our hearts. Right? Okay, so eternity's in your heart. And then in 1 Peter chapter 3, 15. Gotta look at the exact 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. God says, but with God, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. In Bible language, that means that in a moment is eternity, and in eternity is a moment. In other words, God can change eternity in a moment. But how do you do that? Well, eternity's in your heart. So, grab a moment, pour your heart into it. Pour your heart into it means do something that's not easy. Do something that's not normal. If you just keep doing what you're always doing, nothing changes. You know, if you just keep being like you've always been, you become invisible. Nobody sees you. Nothing happens. There's things that need to be said that you've never said. There's people that need to hear I love you that you've never said I love you. There's dads that need to be here. Children that need to hear. I remember one day, probably 10, 11 years ago, Father's Day. I picked up the phone, I called my dad, because you're supposed to. Father's Day, you're supposed to. And I said, hey, Dad, happy Father's Day. Thanks, John. I'm so glad you called. He was ready to hang up. And I said, Dad, don't hang up. Why? I want to say something. What? Say that. Glad you're my dad. Crackly voice. Glad you're mine too. I love you too. Click. You don't say that. I've never heard that. You don't talk like that. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Never heard that. Just because you never heard it doesn't mean you can't say it. That night I went over to my brother's house actually, and all my family, 5 brothers and 5 sisters. With all their kids, there's 93 of us. It's called a crowd. It's intimidating. It's peer pressure. And I walked into the middle of them all, saw my dad, went straight from my dad. He comes over, he puts his arms around me and gives me a kiss. Never done that before. And I thought, Dad, you need to shave. And he said, have I ever told you how proud of you I am? He said, look at me. I want you to know that I love you. Do you ever forget it? Do you think he started loving me in that moment? It's just, I did something that I'd never done, that nobody in my family ever did. But you know, ever since that day, he never stopped telling me. Every time I left him, every time, he'd say, I love you, I'm proud of you. But not just me, all my brothers and sisters. Do you know that you can change eternity in a moment? And every day is full of those moments. There's 86,400 of them every single day. Just get ready to grab a moment. Pour your heart into it. Some of us could even just pick up the phone today and do one of those things that just never, don't do what you've always done. Do something that needs to be done. And then thirdly, tell the world. Honor the past. Honor what you've received. Grab a moment, pour your heart into it, and tell the world. Tell the world that I'm a Christian. Tell the world about Jesus. There's so many people trying to tell them. Got your soapbox out in the corner, screaming at everybody. Repent. People don't want to hear you. People don't want to listen. You know how you teach people something? All learning happens as a result of scratching the itch, answering the question. First, there needs to be the question. The Bible tells us that we need to be ready to give an answer for every hope. Everything that people see in our life that they say, what's going on? We need to be ready to give an answer. So I think the way we tell the world is we live a life that provokes a question. We live a life that provokes, what's wrong with you? Why are you so different? Why are you always smiling? Why do you, in the face of all this, have such confidence? They come into this church, they're going to be asking questions like, what's wrong with you guys? You all on drugs? It's the happiest church I've ever seen. Everybody's smiling. See, but that's when we begin to answer the question. Tell the world, Jesus is alive. I hope you got something out of this. Pastor.
Wow, what a great message. I loved how he spoke about the fact that what we do now will change or echo into eternity. And I think it's so easy for us to get so consumed or maybe even overwhelmed with the thought of passing on the baton or the baton. And basically, we kind of get stuck and do nothing. But the reality is, I think he hit it on the head when he said, value the moments. When you come out of this message this week, why don't you start thinking about how you could do the moments well? And momentum is the collection of good moments. So keep thinking about that. Keep doing great moments. Speaking of which, epic moment coming up. We are in NYC doing a pop-up small group. If you are in New York, or if you could get to New York, or if you're traveling to New York for work, hit us up on our Instagram. We'll give you the details and come hang out with us. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be meaningful. It's gonna be a great moment. Be there. It's gonna be awesome. Speaking of other great meaningful things that are happening, we have Made for This coming up on May 22nd, and you want to be there. It's where we as a church come together midweek and we really focus on what God is speaking to us. It's a leadership message. It's a heart and soul message about the vision of our church, where we're going, where we're currently at. It's always a powerful night, probably the best worship we have. We will see you there. Anyway, church, have a great week. We'll see you back here next week.